I'm here at the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum here in Auburn, Indiana. And I'm here with Brandon Anderson. He's the executive director. And we're gonna have a great tour of this beautiful building filled with beautiful pieces, I call them pieces of art.
They are the rolling sculpture.
Art that you can enjoy. I mean, I enjoy all kinds of
art. On the road, or photos, or looking in a museum.
Right, but tell us about this place. What makes this place special?
This is a really incredibly special place, and it's like a time machine, and you're stepping back into history to 1930. So we are not a garage of just cars. We are actually that history. You are coming into 1930. This building was built as the original international headquarters of the Auburn Automobile Company. So the Auburn Automobile Company started in 1900, had their first vehicle in 1903, continued creating wonderful cars, and then the company actually went into receivership, and one of the investors met with a young individual named Auburn Cord, E.L. Cord. He came on to be general manager in 1924, and then he acquired so many shares and stock in the company, he became president by 1927, fully outright owning the company. So he wanted to create one central location, kind of the nerve center, if you will, for the company. So it could have the administrative offices, the blueprints, clay modeling studio, experimental engineering and design, this grand showroom, all in one centralized headquarters. So the building you're coming into today opened in 1930 to the public, and it was really only here until 1937 under the ownership of the company, because that's when it closed. So we are coming up on 50 years. Next year is our 50th anniversary. This building has been a museum longer than it's been anything else in its history.
So there is a gap there.
There is. So the building was used for a period of time. It was sold from the Auburn Automobile Company. Dallas Winslow purchased the building and everything that was left in it, and he created the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Co. So you can still come home to Auburn and have your Auburn Cord or Duesenberg worked on here. They had the tools, they had the dies, etc.
The 50s started as well, and we had.
Yep, so the club was starting in the 1950s, the festival starting in the 1960s. We acquired the building in 73 and opened in 74. So during that time, people were working with Dallas Winslow until he got out of the business in the 60s. It was sold to a garment manufacturing company. They used the building and rented out different areas to a lot of different companies, including this showroom was a machining factory.
This front showroom.
They had lathes bolted to the floor. The chandeliers were long auctioned off. There was a drop ceiling in here. A lot of the windows were covered up. So we have some people who have told us they were here during that time period, or had at least seen it, and just sparks were flying in the showroom. So thankfully, it's still here.
It's so grand when you walk in.
I know.
Pillars, cars.
And we have, I'll show you some photos too from that time period so you can see what it looked like. But the garment company then wanted to go ahead and sell the building. The name was Marshall's. So they put it on the market. They were going to auction it off. It didn't sell during the first auction. So actually in 1973, Auburn Automotive Heritage Incorporated bought the building for $105,000, put in about $150,000 to open it to the public in 1974. When we first opened, the only thing that was open to the public was this showroom, and we had 24 cars on loan. We didn't own any cars at that point. So it was really a startup, and it was a grassroots effort. But now, almost 50 years later, the entire building is open to the public. That's over 100,000 square feet, and we own over 120 vehicles and 2 airplanes.
That's a pretty spectacular collection and rundown.
Yeah.
From one part to all of this. So we're in the showroom. I think when people think of the museum, they think of this area.
That's right. This is the most iconic space in the museum. It's 20-foot tall ceiling, 6-foot tall Italian chandeliers, Italian terrazzo floor, 19-foot windows. This space was meant to just blow you away. And what's interesting, this was... Yeah, and it still does, exactly. This building was not open to the public. This wasn't a public showroom or a public dealership. This is where dealers from around the world would come and choose the cars that they wanted to sell in their home dealership. And kind of as a reminder, I say people coming from around the world, the Auburn Automobile Company had dealerships in 89 different countries, which included Cord and Duesenberg. Right. So this was a worldwide company, and this was the worldwide headquarters.
Auburn Cord Duesenberg is in the name. I see a Duesie. I see see a Cord. Let's talk about some cars.
Yeah, yep, that sounds great. So E.L. Cord started his own line called the Cord Automobile. The first vehicle that they created was the Cord L29. That's also holding the fame for the first American vehicle sold to the public with front-wheel drive. So very, very important car. Then later on, the Cord 810 and 812 would be introduced. And then in the later 1920s, after E.L. Cord acquired ownership of the company, he then acquired Duesenberg and hired the brothers to work for the company. And when he hired them, they were working on the experimental Duesenberg X project. He let them finish that and then said, the X is done, we're moving on to a new car. I want you to build the most luxurious, the grandest, the fastest car that anybody's ever seen. And that's what we know today as the Duesenberg Model J. So the car, like example, it's a doozy. Yes, and the term became popular during the time of Duesenberg. It is not only related to Duesenbergs. That phrase was used prior to this time, but it became synonymous with Duesenbergs. This Cord is an E1 prototype. So this is a car that was completely restored, donated to the museum. Actually, about 99% of the collection in the museum is donated to us. By the public who have restored these cars or owned them through many generations, and they want to share them with the public. So they donate them to the museum so that we can share them here with the public 362 days a year, keep the family name associated with those who donated, and then also share the full complex history of these vehicles.
It's so remarkable. Obviously, there's history before E.L. Cord, but how, I don't know, important he was to not only the automotive industry, but also American Airlines.
Yeah, it was American Airways when Cord came on. He hired the first president. They changed that to American Airlines. He owned Checker Cab. He owned the limousine body company. He owned lots of different types of transportation, railroad, uranium mining, real estate, television, radio. He was a Nevada state senator. He owned Handy Hot appliances. I mean, really, it runs the gamut. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and here in Auburn, what he did, you know, the cars were fantastic that were being put together here. But by 1924, they were getting a little tired. They hadn't had a complete revamp of the line. So Cord came in, there was a backstock of cars that hadn't sold. So he had them repainted, redone, bright colors, striping, sold the full back lot of cars. And then he continued from there. Yes, absolutely.
And that's really selling.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very cool, interesting story. And just last year, we opened up our whole new gallery on E.L. Cord and the Cord Corporation. So you can see that too, absolutely. And E.L. Cord also owned Lycoming engines, which are in all of these cars after E.L. Cord's ownership. And then Lycoming engines were also used on Stinson airplanes. So this Stinson has been through a 3.5-year restoration. It has had 18 owners after the Auburn Automobile Company, the original owners of this airplane. And I had shared that what this building looked like in 1930 when it opened. So again, like a time machine, you can see the building being built, finally opened in 1930. Here's the grand showroom, and there's a Stinson right there in the same corner. And then this is the other side of the showroom. You have Lycoming engines, you have your Duesenberg chassis, and then you also have a Dodge boat in the corner. So Cord was also showing off different companies that were held by the Cord Corporation. So this really was a showroom for everything.
It's ahead of his time.
And we talked about 89 different countries. You can see right drive supercharged Auburn right here in the showroom.
What's it doing?
Now this one is supercharged, but some people, when they restore the cars, if they just wanted the look or an add-on accessory of being supercharged, or just really love those corrugated pipes, that's something that you could also do as an aftermarket. And the car that you see right here, this is one of the first 100 hand-built Cords. So to be in the 1936 auto show, in 1935, you had to have 100 of these cars in production. So they were scrambling to get these cars built for the New York Auto Show to be able to show a car that would blow everybody away. If you can believe, this is a 1936 model, but it was constructed in 1935. Again, one of the first 100. But at the New York Auto Show, people were standing on other cars to see this. This was a dramatic departure from any other vehicle that had ever been created. So you have the hidden headlights, you have the coffin nose grille, first cars with AM standard radio, the horn ring, the tail lights are built into the body. There is a fuel filler cap on it. So they're just really amazing things that happened in the 1930s. So this was corrected because actually if you had the headlights open, you couldn't open the hood. So not a great design originally, so that was changed. Then you can go all the way to a Cordell 29. Again, first car with front wheel drive. E.O. Cord was inspired by seeing the racer Miller on the Indy 500 and his front wheel drive race car. So he hired Miller to be the engineer to create this vehicle for the public. We have over 150 different hood ornaments and radiator mascots that right now we're representing the American brands. These are on loan to us from a gentleman in Naples, Florida.
Because you have Cadillacs, you have, you have all kinds of ACD.
You can really see what we were trying to do here too. Let's say the Cadillac hood ornaments on the bottom shelf. It's that evolution. So you can see those designs also becoming more streamlined.
A lot of collectors for those.
Yes.
It's so unique. When I first was looking at them, I was like, why is it called a mascot? But then you start seeing like, okay.
You're like, oh, it represents the brand or whatever you're interested in. This year, the theme is supercharged cars. So the owner of this year's festival poster, Amanda Pete, she used one of the vehicles from the museum's collection. So we have a 1935 851 Auburn Bowtail Speedster supercharged.
Which this is my favorite car of all time.
It's an amazing car. It's even more fun to drive.
I like the black. I had more, there's a Canario one. I also like, I forgot what the action in the red one. I've seen sold at auction before, but the supercharged and then the boat tail. This is a sports car.
Yep.
For its time.
Oh yeah, absolutely it was. These cars also have a little dash plaque on them that Ab Jenkins drove each one over 100.6 miles per hour.
Could you imagine that?
I would not do that anymore. It's about, it's getting close to be a 100-year-old car. I'm not going to go 100 in that one, but a nice 45 is good.
Sure.
Yep, the taper back there, just the aerodynamic design, and then just the look of it. And the Auburn Speedster was inspired, I had already mentioned the Duesenberg X experimental project.
Yes.
Well, if you come over here, there are only 4 Model X's in the world, and you're seeing 3 of them here. The last one is in Jay Leno's collection.
Okay.
But there was only one Speedster that was ever built. So that's the Duesenberg X Speedster from 1927. This is the design and the car that inspired the Auburn Speedster.
Okay.
So interestingly enough, Duesenberg Speedster came before the Auburn Speedster.
If I was just peering real quick, I'd say, oh yeah, it's an Auburn. And then you start seeing some things that really represent Duesenberg. So this was, so I'm trying to think, Duesenberg merged or was acquired
By Cord.
What year was that?
That was in 1920. It's either 1927 or 1929.
So late 20s.
Late 20s, E.O. Cord acquired Duesenberg.
So were they manufacturing this before the acquisition?
Correct. So they were working on this when E.O. Cord, working on the X's. So you have the X dual cowl Phaeton right there. There's an X limo over here. And then the 4th X is also a dual cowl, I believe. So this is the project that Cord said, finish it up. And then I want you to work on the next vehicle, which became the Model J. There was another experimental vehicle, and it was called the Y. This was being built prior to the J, and there were only a couple of them built. All of them were ordered to be destroyed. One of the Duesenberg brothers saved the body and put it on a Model A chassis. So when you're looking at this, you can really see what was starting to come together to become the Model J.
Yep.
So dual cowl, you just basically have another cowl right here.
Yep.
So you've got the one here, and then you have another one here. It's kind of its own separate enclosed compartment too, if you will. Usually has a windshield. Sometimes you'll kind of see the butterfly opening as well. So it's almost like kind of a private rear area back here. Some of them you'll see they have the radios or dresser set. Those are entertainment area. Some of them have a bar in them. We have a few that have a bar.
Like first class.
Yeah.
Really was.
And Frank Lloyd Wright was an avid automobile fanatic. It's estimated he owned about 80 cars. He did own 2 Cords. This is the second Cord that Frank owns. So this is in the museum's collection.
Is this the original color?
It is not. It was, when Wright had it, called Cherokee Red. All of his cars were Cherokee Red.
Okay.
That was his signature color, and he
Yes.
used it in a lot of his designs. This car, when it was restored by the individual who donated it, he restored it to the color that you see from the sticker on the window, which is a period sticker for actually a concert in Taliesin at Spring Green.
So it's interesting. So Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, so his cars were the same color as many of the buildings.
Buildings, trim, etc. Yeah, that was his color. And then this car has received a lot of attention and notoriety, as it should. This is the first ever Duesenberg passenger vehicle. So this vehicle, the Duesenbergs were continuing in automotive racing and creating the racing engines, but they wanted to get into the automotive passenger auto production. So they got their first order, and it was by Mr. Castle, Samuel Northrop Castle out of Hawaii. He was part of a missionary family, sugar cooperative plantation in Hawaii. So created this car and had the Bender Body Company build the body. And it is said in Mr. Castle's handwriting himself that he penned the body and worked with the body company. What was really unique was Mr. Castle was 7 feet tall. So when you look on the inside of the car,
Early 1900s.
when you look in the inside of the car, you'll see that the pedals and the cowl are really pushed far forward. That's so Mr. Castle could sit in there. It's built to his frame.
He drove this from Hawaii.
Yep, he had drove this around Hawaii on the plantation. It later would come stateside to California for an auto show, actually a Concours in the 1960s. Then it would stay with the family. It did premiere at Pebble prior to restoration. And then the family decided they wanted to bring the vehicle back to exactly how it looked when it was produced and delivered to Mr. Castle in 1921. So they did a 10,000-hour, $1 million restoration on the car. And then it was,
like it.
Yeah. And then in 2019, after 99 years of ownership, the family donated the vehicle to our museum.
Wow. Single ownership. I'm just thinking of.
It's the last classic car, single family owner to have ever existed. And it is vehicle number 27 on the National Historic Vehicle Register. It's been on the National Mall. It's been across the United States, us sharing the history of Duesenberg and also the history of the Castle family and what this vehicle means to automotive history. This is the first car with 4-wheel hydraulic brakes because those were patented and invented by Fred Duesenberg.
I mean, looking at it's incredible. It's different when I'm used to it. Yeah.
I say it almost looks a little villainous. It's kind of like a early, like a mob car. Just it's dark and it's got this very particular stance about it.
Right. I think black on this is okay.
Yeah. Oh man, but you know, black's the worst to clean, especially when you're out at shows because it's just dirt in the air.
How often are you taking these to shows? Maybe Pebble Beach or Amelia or other places?
Yeah, we go to approximately about 10 shows a year. Okay. So we go from Florida, California, Maryland, South Carolina, all around the Midwest. So we try to be very well represented. We do care for our vehicles. We do keep them in running condition. We do have a conservation center where we work on the cars to keep them in running condition. The only thing when we have them on display in the museum, the batteries are taken out and the gas is removed. You want to be sure to keep the fluids in the car, the oils, the lubricants, making sure your seals aren't drying out. And it is in the best interest to keep these cars running. You know, a lot of people have a fear that once a car goes to a museum, it's not going to run again. It's just going to be a showpiece. We try to disprove that. We are a very active museum, and it's in the best interest of the collection to keep the cars running.
Your toy run.
No, it's not.
Part of it, but
Yeah, well, hey, perk of the job.
You'll make that sacrifice.
Yeah, right. We can go to the Cord Gallery. You can see the E.L. Cord Gallery of Entrepreneurship. So it really goes into the story of Cord being that entrepreneur, and we want to really inspire the next generation to be that next entrepreneur like Cord. So we explore the different companies, his personal life, how he started out actually hot rodding Model Ts and selling them. That's where he got his start. Even we have a picture of him and his first wife getting married, and on a picture of their wedding day in the car they're driving away from the reception from, it's a hot rodded Model T and it says for sale. So he's always looking to basically sell and then move on to the next thing. We even have Cord's Lucky Strike cigarettes, special ashtray for him, his matches that are monogrammed, his Tiffany toiletry set.
So how do you source these? The whole process?
Yeah, over the years, a lot of it has come from personal family members. A decent amount came also when E.L. Cord passed away, and his wife Virginia. Many of the family members still own a lot of items. We do have several of them on display in this gallery. So at some point they may be donated to the museum. So we have an interesting collection of things that have been donated and then things that we have on loan as well. In this part of the building, this originally was experimental engineering and design. So what you and I are standing on right now is a completely dead level flat terrazzo floor. So when the cars would go into, say, a one-off production, going from a drawing to a clay model to a prototype, you would have it here on this floor and also be able to measure out basically the final car and load it down with weight to make sure it's distributed evenly. So this flat level floor, dead level floor, has a story to tell, and there are two of them in this building. Original.
Wow. One of those if these walls could talk.
Oh, it would be interesting. Because even if you look at the windows, they're textured, you can't see in or out. That's original. It's even written on the blueprints. Again, experimental engineering and design. A lot of the big automobile companies were sending corporate spies here to Auburn to try and see what the company was doing, what was the next thing that they were going to be pushing out. So only a few people had access to this area. And here's where we talk some about Cord Corporation, some of the 100+ companies that he had to. He even had a steamship company, a limousine body company, Checker Cabs, Yellow Cabs, Parmalee Cabs, Continental Airlines, Columbia Axle Company. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So we have a Checker here, a Checker Cab that's in our collection, next to an L29. And these are all in front of a colorized image from the original black and white that's in our archives. This was the original Auburn Airport, which was funded by E.L. Cord. This is where the current Reiki Park is. So this was replaced later on by the current DeKalb County Airport. But you can see the Stinsons, the L29s in there. And this Stinson, again, E.L. Cord owned Stinson. This is a later model, but still represents the early designs of those Art Deco planes.
They manufacture those here as well?
That was in Kalamazoo.
Okay. Lots of inspiration there.
Yep. And we have some very significant vehicles that I'll be pointing out along the way too, with great provenance, such as this Cord. This was the last Cord to come off the production line, and it was E.L. Cord's personal car. And we have more stories with great cars like Moonshadow over here, who is owned by one of the foremost historians on Cord 810s, 812s. And this car was donated to the museum after Josh Maltz's passing. So we continue to get this car out because Josh and his wife drove it all over the world. So they would actually ship the car and then drive it wherever they were taking trips. So it has literally seen the world.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that would be great.
So 37 is the last year of the Cord.
Of all the vehicles.
All the vehicles.
Everything shut down. So an interesting tidbit. So here's Cord as a state senator with Kennedy. This is, I mentioned his company Handy Hot. So They had built these heaters, little tabletop ranges, a little sandwich toaster. That's a tabletop washing machine.
That's a rice machine for you.
That's a juicer. This is the first juicer, and this was one of E.O. Cord's favorite things that one of his companies owns. Just really, really unique. So yeah. So people ask us a lot, how do you get the cars up and down? It's a fantastic question. It's a great place for us to be in the original building and to use the original vehicle elevator. So cars would go up and down. The wood shop was above us. And then if you notice, there's another garage door on the outside. So you could bring the cars from the outside or inside upstairs. And we still use it today. This is where we work on our vehicles, keep them in running condition. We've got our lifts in here. We have a volunteer pit crew that works twice a week.
This is a full shop.
Yeah.
And this is
custom built. We built this. And so right now, for example, this cord, really unique cord. This is one of two dual side mount cords. There are only two ever created in history, and this is one of them. We are replacing a seal on this. This Duesenberg Model J is the first Duesenberg that was donated to the museum by Mr. Don Carr. We have recently had to replace the head on this, which for anybody watching, if you've ever had to replace a head on a Duesenberg, yeah, it is not easy. And new heads are not out there. So
what do you do then? You have to source them and restore them?
Have to source them, restore them. The one that was on this car, which it was donated with, Mr. Carr had rebuilt it so many times because he drove this car heavily. His name is synonymous with, I mean, when you talk about the club and Duesenbergs. But he was a major driver, and the head had just been repaired way too many times. Wouldn't hold any pressure. We sent it off to a couple of different companies. We sent pictures to places that said, we can do anything. And they look at it. 1 minute later, we'll get an email back. There's nothing we can do for that. So that's what made, one of many reasons that made this such a long process.
Well, you figured it out.
Yeah, we figured it out. It's now running. We're just doing kind of final testing. Then we're actually debating right now if, when we put the car back on display, if we leave the hood off so people can see it, just for maybe a couple of months. I kind of like it. So this is our early Auburn's gallery. So this gallery dates 1903 to about 1924. Again, we choose 1924 because that's the year that E.O. Cord came on. So these are the vehicles that the company was selling prior to Cord being here. Again, beautiful vehicles, very unique colors. Number one question is always, is this a real color or is this an authentic? Yeah, these are authentic colors. Yeah, this is one of my favorite cars. I love the monocle windshield. And this is the first early Auburn I had ever driven. And I said the first car by the Auburn Automobile Company was 1903. Unfortunately, does not exist. Gone to history. The earliest known Auburn we own, it's this 1904. And then that is an Eckhart carriage. So the automobile company was born from the Eckhart Carriage Company. So this is a very early car. It actually predates Haynes Apperson. So there's still the debate who invented the car, who got there first. Well, I don't think that answer will ever be answered. One of our earliest vehicles is an 1899 Waverly electric car.
Yes.
So, like recently we put in EV chargers in the parking lot. And we're bringing that full scope back and talking about electricity, steam, gas. The problems they were having back then are the same problems we're having now. It's the longevity of the charge and how long it takes to charge.
Kind of funny, interesting.
Yeah,
Right.
100-something years later, we're in the same spot. John Dillinger did come through Auburn. He actually threw the sheriff in jail in the Auburn Police Department, stole the Tommy machine gun, and it was until 2015 that gun had been held by the FBI in Arizona. The police department had to prove to the FBI in Arizona that it was theirs, that it's the city's, with original sales documents, including the original serial number. Of course, we have Studebaker. Stutz was made in Indianapolis. We've got 2 beautiful Stutz. This is a Speedway 4. Some cars you may or may not have heard of, like Marmon. We've got Cole, Apperson, Westcott. Kind of a great sampling of really unique cars. This is the second car we own that was owned by Frank Lloyd Wright. So you can see him there with his last wife, Olga Vanna, in one of those Crosleys. He bought those 3 at the same time in Wisconsin. And even as recent as 1979, a Scout prototype with a fiberglass body.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I love Scout.
Oh, I mean, this would be on the road. Totally.
Well, I guess it's Indiana with not Indiana without racing.
Yep, so we've got our racing gallery. Remember, the Duesenberg started out in what kind of racing? Bicycle.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't know that, but there's a photo of Fred and Augie right there on the wall, promotional photo with them on their racing bikes. Then they got into motor vehicle racing, or creating the engines for racing, then later on into production vehicles. Auburn's, Cords, Duesenbergs, these cars were all raced. Of course, the Duesenberg name is synonymous with racing. This car was raced by the Collier family of Florida. So this is a 1932 Auburn 12160 and was custom modified by the Colliers for racing. And a lot of people ask what that coil piping is for. That's basically for expansion.
Okay. Very practical.
Yeah. Why do we have a 1954 Corvette? Because this was the first common man's race car. 53 was first year of them. We have a second year, which minimal changes to it.
There's something for...
There really is. Even if you don't like cars, honestly. I say you don't have to be a car guy or car gal to fall in love with the museum. We have something here for everybody.
Oh, and the history too.
Yep.
I'm a really first car guy.
Oh yeah?
Car person.
Well, that's how, like I said, I grew up around cars. My dad collected cars, not classic cars. This is a whole new world for me, but it's the history, it's the tech, it's the engineering, it's the art. That's why this place is so unique. Like this car being out on the Bonneville Salt Flats. So we have photos over here that show you like the different racing surfaces they had. So, you know, salt, brick, wood, sand, the different racing helmets that are safe, and some are just basically a piece of leather. From our archives, racing videos that you can choose different videos and watch and see just how crazy racing was back then. Crazy now, crazier back then. People just flying from cars on fire. This is a great example of a race car that E.O. Cord would have seen that looks like the Miller race car, which is owned, the specific one has been here before. It's owned by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So this is kind of similar to what a Miller looks like, but this is a Bowles. We've got a couple Jags. Which significant, very significant cars for automotive history. That's why they're here. Oh, you wanted to see the Tasco. So other unique cars that we have here too. For example, we have a Ruxton. There are only about a dozen Ruxtons that are still in existence. This is a unique car that tells the story of the competition of getting to front-wheel drive first. So, versus the L29. L29 was the first car to debut and be sold to the public with front-wheel drive. The Ruxton did come out shortly after that. However, this vehicle was very, very short-lived. So in the 1940s, Gordon Buehrig was asked to work with a group of investors to create a modern sport racing car. So they worked together and they created the design. We actually have the little model of this and the drawings for it. Gordon named it the Tasco, is for the American Sports Car Company, so the acronym there. Very futuristic, can't believe this is 1948. It's got magnesium wheels, it's got a Mercury engine with a modified Arden head. The wheels, actually the fenders and wheels, they turn together. This is the first car in the world with T-tops. So Gordon Buehrig invented and patented the T-top. So when the Corvette came out with it, he sued, and he did win for an undisclosed amount.
That's right.
Yeah. It does have two different fuel tanks. There's a switch on the dash that you change between regular fuel and racing fuel.
So they just said, hey, we want you to build this is right after the war, I'm sure, like the craziest,
yeah,
or the fastest,
futuristic. This L29 Speedster was a show car. This is a reproduction from the original drawings. This car went to Paris, and in all accounts of history, nobody knows what ended up to the car. So there were two reproduced,
went to Paris?
and then never returned, supposedly, and nobody knows where it went. So two were constructed from the original prints and specifications. This is one of them. The Stalls Museum up in Michigan has the other.
Okay.
And this car has a humidor and a bar in it.
So when they reproduced it, it wasn't an era, right? It was like, was it back in the 30s?
No, this one was done, I want to say, in like the 90s.
Okay.
You know, and then you see
the,
like the Duesenberg 2s and the Cord 8/10s and
yes,
kind of those continuation lines.
Who doesn't? Is it just custom shops?
Custom,
okay,
yeah. And a group of very passionate, dedicated people to see it through.
Right. Yeah, because I've seen, I mean, there's these and then there's the masterpiece.
Yeah, yeah.
That just ruined.
That's a true, it's not even a repro. It's, people online call them fakies or something like that. This cord is Gordon Buehrig's personal cord. So how cool would that be to drive the car that you designed? And for our Chryslers, you know, we're putting these two together because this is 1933 and that's 1935. In just 2 years, there's a dramatic difference between the Imperial CL and the Airflow.
The Airflow has the side. Why is it called an Airflow?
Just the design, it's aerodynamic.
Okay.
It's curved, it's kind of that Art Deco design. So we were talking about reproduction cars. There was a company that produced Cord 8/10s and called them the 8/10ths. They are 8/10ths in scale. Worked with Gordon Buehrig on the design. So right here, recently donated to us so we can preserve and tell the story of that continuation line and the continuation of the Cord. It has a Corvair engine in it. The hidden headlights are electrically operated. So very different, but you can just see what the inspiration was and just kind of really unique being able to display them together.
Pretty cool, even though it's a reproduction.
Oh yeah, I mean, we accepted it into the permanent collection. This actually hung in the Cord headquarters. So this is the life of E.L. Cord. So a lot of the different industries that he was involved in are all put on this display. Dodge boats. Lycoming, look at the airplane engine.
One thing he didn't do was competition.
He did.
He did the trick.
Yep, of course. Of course he did.
The wheel or...
He never went into space.
Oh.
Yep, this is E.L. Cord's private office. So he had his own closet, he had his own bathroom.
You don't want to take this as your own?
Actually, this used to be the director's office when the museum first opened.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I won't take it away. It's good for the public to be able to see it. It looks kind of sparse in here, but this is the original photo of what the office looked like in 1930. I think much exactly the same.
Original.
Yeah. This gallery focuses on the process of design. So we had talked about clay modeling. So Gordon Buehrig actually put this clay model together. So you get the central wooden butt to get the basic form, and then you put all the clay on it, and you just reduce the clay away to the design that you want to achieve. These are original Gordon Buehrig tools. And this is called the design bridge. This was created by Buehrig. So what you did with this, you have your drawing and scale that you want the car to get to. You know, the scale of what it's going to be in your clay model. So you convert those numbers and use those measurements, and you use the pin there moving to the left on the sides, and this whole thing goes front and back to do the measurements for your model.
Okay.
And the company did hire artists to do different types of gauges, hubcaps. None of this happened by accident.
Right. You guys have like archive advertisements or magazine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll go down. The marketing hallway has some on display. These are the marketing offices. And these are just a sampling of advertisements that you could see for Auburn Cord and Duesenberg. So the advertising offices here and what they were creating, really incredible top-of-the-line ads that were also segmented to markets. So if you were interested more in, say, supercharged or going fast, you have those ads. If you're more into front-wheel drive and safety, you have that with Cord ads. Or how you made your father thinks you made a responsible decision because you bought in Auburn.
How Dad won.
Yeah. Then the Duesenberg ads, these were some of the first ads that the product was not in the advertisement. So it's selling a lifestyle. So this woman, she drives a Duesenberg. She's ordering her help around her nice sunken garden. She's got her fur and dress on. There once he drives a Duesenberg, he's reading a book by this big massive fireplace in this huge English hall. Or hunting out with your bloodhound dog. It was the lifestyle.
That's remarkable. That's ahead of its time.
And even Cord, thanks to youth. She is young. She deserves a Cord.
Front driver sleep.
That's true. And then here we have the Auburn, Indiana gallery. So we saw the Indiana built gallery that had the map, and we have a dozen different auto companies in Auburn. So this represents those vehicles. We don't have an history, or well, some of those vehicles no longer exist. There is not an example of them. But we have done our best to acquire what we can of what was built right here in Auburn. The photos around the windows, as you can see, it's the Eckhart Public Library right there. These are all images from around Auburn. And this is our engineering gallery, so we can talk about the different types of engines. For example, the Duesenbergs worked with Bugatti and King on this engine. The Duesenbergs were contracted by the US government in 1917 to create, I believe it was 4 of these V-16 airplane engines. For World War I, but the war ended in 1918, so none of them were actually put into use. And this is a cool little metallurgique from Belgium. It's the only one in America. And it's got a little boat tail.
Yeah. It fits. It fits the...
Yeah. Well, you want to go take a ride?
Let's do it.
All right.
Hello, audience. So what are we driving?
This is a 1930 Duesenberg Model J convertible sedan.
Excellent. Is this a
Body by Murphy.
Yes.
So no, it's really awesome, and just being able to get the cars out. And I mean, you're literally driving history. And thinking about the people that came before us and owned these cars. Just like the Castle Duesenberg. I mean, that is one of the most significant vehicles in our collection and in Duesenberg history. It's the first one.
Right.
So
that was the menacing one we saw towards the beginning. Yep.
So yeah, it's so it is a curated collection. It's not a gathering of cars. It's not, it's not a personal hobby that I think this is a really cool car and we should have it in the collection. It goes through a pretty refined process.
All right. We have made it back. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This was a lot of fun, very insightful. If you're watching this video, you just got to come out and see it firsthand.
Right.
ACD Festival's coming up. What do we have to look forward to here at the museum?
Well, museum is usually ground zero for a lot of the events. So even if they aren't specific museum events, like let's say the awards brunch or a night at the museum dinner. So there's so much happening here. So you're going to see a lot of great exhibits, new vehicles, etc. Beautiful museum. We are going to have our fundraising event, the Restoring the Legacy Gala, on Thursday evening, which helps support the museum. It's one of our largest fundraisers of the year. So that's on Thursday night. Saturday night, we have the Gatsby Gala. So we'll have a live jazz band for that. It's very 1920s theme time period.
It's perfectly timed, like right after the auction.
Yeah.
You can go right from the auction, have a good time,
Well,
and go to Gatsby.
Get one of those Delahaye's or any of the cars you have available at
Just
the
drive it
auction
over.
and drive it over.
There you go.
So we're really looking forward to a great Labor Day this year.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, Brandon. A lot of fun. This is history.
Yes.
And it's here in Auburn, Indiana. There's so much to do, so much to see, so much to really learn about and engage in for all, not just the car enthusiasts, right? The history buff, the family,
everybody.
the tinker, the builder. So for Worldwide TV, this was Brandon and Justin. We'll see you at Auburn.
See you in Auburn.